Right, I'm going to start with you actually, Gabriel. Because I was reading an interview with Johnny where he sort of was mentioning that when he first read the script, when he first kind of was going to sign on, it read more like a sort of jukebox musical. I was wondering what you sort of changed, because I guess it sounded like when you came on board, you really took it into a different direction.
Okay, I don't think it was. I mean, it specifically was never a jukebox movie in the sense that, you know, we always knew that we weren't going to have, you know, obviously David's music, and so it was kind of, which in a way was a blessing, because it meant that there wasn't that pressure to make it about the music, you know, and so it was always, you know, one of the sort of things about this chapter of David's life is that it is a time when he was playing a lot of covers. He was still very much trying to figure out, you know, who he was in the world. And that, you know, that made it the sort of, in a way, the perfect chapter to tell without, you know, without his music.
To be sorry, just to clear that up, I think that's referencing something where I was saying that before Gabriel came on board, yeah, I was sent a very early draft of the script where it covered more time, and it was it was a different flavored film. And what I said was that when Gabriel came on board and when I met him, you know, what was wonderful was to realize that it was going to be very focused on this tiny moment and be completely, you know, the opposite of a jukebox musical. Anyway, just so you know.
Oh no, yeah, I was saying, this was before you came on board as well.
Yeah.
No, but Johnny, I was going to say, I mean, of course, Bowie was an enigma. I mean, he was an elusive presence, a kind of myth of sorts. It was kind of a huge part of his appeal. One of the kind of great things about him is that we never really understand him. Yet in this instance, it was your job to understand him. Was that quite a challenge to kind of find the human being in someone who, let's face it, is probably actually comes from outer space?
Yeah, well, yeah. And that's the thing. Everybody says, you know, Bowie is a sort of alien creature, and I think basically it seemed to me that what happened was that at the point at which he started creating these characters in sort of 1972 into 1973, when Ziggy sort of lands, he decided that he was going to kind of have absolute control of his image and meticulously kind of be one step ahead of anyone's kind of perception of him by creating a narrative around a fictional character and be an actor sort of lost. You know, the real David Bowie wouldn't be visible, you know, and he'd be this series of kind of creations. And before he decided to do that, you know, what I learned was that he was this very vulnerable, often quite lost, quite traumatized person, trying to because he thinks that you have to be your authentic self to be a valid songwriter or whatever. So he's trying to write from that place, and it's quite dark. And the songs that you listen to from The Man Who Sold the World are you know, he's trying to kind of open himself up to people, and there's what's there is lyrically really kind of dark, basically, and the stuff that I read about this period and the stuff that Gabriel turned me on to, and the footage of him from this period, you realize he's just his real self at this place is quite traumatized, lost, scared, and kind of desperate in lots of ways. And that's not the David that we know once he starts kind of controlling his image. And I think that was what for me was interesting to look at and say, look, there's this person behind all of that, the person who created and who wrestled absolute control and started projecting this image of himself. Before that, he was this vulnerable thing.
Yeah, because Johnny, I was going to say, was it almost quite comforting to remind yourself that, you know, even David Bowie got nervous, even he felt anxiety about performing live or about the future of his career as a kind of performer yourself, a musician and actor? Did it almost make you feel like, you know, did it almost justify your own nerves as well, to remind yourself you're not alone in some ways?
Yeah, absolutely. and it made me reassess, you know, the process that I'm on as a performer, and because I think I'm often in that place that David is in 1971, trying to go out there and thinking that I have to kind of pull my chest open so people can see my heart, and that's a really scary thing. You know, sometimes it works and sometimes it's beautiful, but sometimes it's just too much. You know, sometimes you're in a place of pain or anxiety, and you feel like you're walking into a, you know, tumultuous ocean, and it's you just drown in energy. And so it was really cool to kind of go, fuck, this is somebody who figured out that he can become this character. And anyway, I've since questioned my whole process, so it's been profound for me in realizing in who I am as a performer as well.
Yeah. And you obviously mentioned to sort of some of the darker elements, but Gabriel, was there much kind of license here to be quite playful when dealing with a subject who himself was quite playful and would often blur the line between fantasy and reality? Do you think that gave you quite a lot of kind of creative license in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, everything that happens in the film, the sort of big building blocks of the film are all fact. You know, they are all founded in fact. But obviously that relationship with the Ron Oberman character, with, you know, Marc Maron's character is basically, you know, that is film license in the sense that, you know, we've taken some liberties with, you know, who he was. In reality, the Ron Oberman who went on the road with David was almost the same age as David. He was much younger. You know, certainly Marc Maron's version of him is, I think, probably, yeah, a little more sardonic, you know, a little more, and that was fun. I mean, I guess, yeah, there's a playfulness in the film in how we tell it, I guess. I mean, what we didn't want to, you know, what we never wanted to do, what I never wanted the film to be, was this sort of, you know, cradle to grave, earnest biopic. You know, we specifically wanted it just to be about this very brief moment in time, you know, as we were saying, that is interesting because it was David before he was famous. That is interesting because it isn't the David that most people know. And one of the things that would always strike me when I was talking to people about the film was when you consider just how incredibly famous David is, how little people knew about any of his family history or about any of the sort of stuff that actually, you know, I think informed so much of his career, that informed that decision to perform as Ziggy and then Aladdin Sane and then the Thin White Duke. You know, all of that came from a really specific need that hopefully, you know, was sort of playing within the film.
Yeah, Gabe, I was going to ask as well. I mean, I didn't see this as a biopic. I saw this as a kind of a snippet of the life of David Bowie. But of course, Stardust has been billed as the David Bowie biopic. Can that word almost put pressure on you and on this project? Not an unfair pressure, do you think?
It just isn't a biopic. It was never meant to be. And so, like, you know, we've made that really, really clear. It's absolutely definitively not doing what Bohemian Rhapsody tried to do or what Rocket Man tried to do. It's, you know, it's just about this very brief moment in time, and that to me is gives you an opportunity to get a bit deeper into the character and to actually dig around in you know, something that I think, you know, informs so much of his professional career, instead of it being this run through his greatest hits, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just, you know, of course, without the kind of rights to David Bowie's back catalogue, it kind of added a kind of slight pressure to the score. But I loved what Anne created. It kind of captures the essence of Bowie's sound and yet remains very film scory. Was that the brief in some ways?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love Anne's score, and I think, yeah, very much what I wanted, the way I imagined the score was as something that felt like a really close musical relative of The Man Who Sold the World, and you know, it's not a pastiche of the tracks on that album, but it definitely feels like it's come from the same place emotionally, and, you know, in terms of the period of it, I guess.
Yeah. And Johnny, has your relationship with Bowie's music changed since playing this role and since taking on this project?
Yeah, hugely. I mean, I couldn't listen to Bowie after we finished shooting. I couldn't listen to him for quite a long time. I just found it very confusing, partly because I've been listening to it so much. I'd just been kind of nothing but Bowie, and trying to kind of be in his head for the whole of the the prep and the period of the shoot. But it's given me a greater appreciation, certainly, of I'm looking for clues in the lyrics, and I was a fan, but I think now I'm a sort of true fan in the way that I have such sort of open sort of empathy for him, understanding more of the context of the songs. But yeah, he's such a different songwriter and artist to me, but going on that journey and living in his shoes literally has that always gives you compassion and empathy for somebody. So I'm massively excited by listening to the records now, and my kids, who had to listen to David Bowie blaring out all the time, they've started to ask for him all the time. So we put on the vinyl, which is really fun.
So just very finally before I go, Gabriel, is that the same for you? Would you say it took you from being a fan into a true fan, or were you already a true fan to start?
I definitely was a true fan. I'd written another movie about David, which was basically about the year David spent with Iggy Pop in West Berlin. So I was sort of a bit of a Bowie anorak already, I guess. But no, I still listen to him all the time. Absolutely, yeah. I think I'm sort of almost more interested in him as a human being than I am as a musician. But yeah, obviously love his music. Yeah.
So just very quickly before I go, is that project about him and Iggy Pop still got potential to come around again?
I'd love to make it, but it would be hard to do without his music. But I would certainly love to do it. Yeah.
Cool. Stardust 2 could be cool. Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time. And best of luck with the movie.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thanks for watching it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey